Hello, everybody. Welcome into Above My Pay Grade. My name is Eric, and as you know, I'm in the military, and I like to bring on people that have military experience as well. Today, I have Jaime from my financial neighbor. That's where I found him on Instagram. Jaime, how are you
Mhm.
doing?
I'm doing excellent, man. Couldn't be any better today.
Yeah, we met in person. What it was 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago in Denver,
Um,
yeah, we're at a finance event and some other
not
stuff. It's
really a
fun.
great guy, but I decided to have him on the podcast anyways.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Your choice in friends is questionable since you hang out with
Huge mistake.
that Ali guy.
I hope he watches this. We
I
haven't known
hope
each better.
so.
Yes, yes, indeed.
Yeah, yeah.
So what got you interested in finances? Because I think, it's kind of rare for people to be into this because it's kind of nerdy and boring,
Yeah.
especially people in the military. So what was the catalyst that brought you into the kind of personal financial space?
So it was two major things. So I think that I always was good with finance. Like there's a story of me like I remember I bought a sound system for my roommate when we were lance corporals in Japan. He didn't have a credit card. I did it. And I figured out how to manage the credit system and leveraging other people's money. But the catalyst was my second divorce in 2021. I was married to an Air Force major, and when we got a divorce, uh, she didn't have that much wealth. I had accumulated a good amount of wealth, and I felt there was a problem. I was like, I was never able to convey my knowledge to her, whether it was because I was her husband or I was just a piece of shit, right? And I could not convey it. But then after the divorce, one day I was running and I'm like, man, I'm pretty good with money. I always talk about credit cards. I care about TSP. I care about my investments. I care about buying houses. I care about crypto. I was doing crypto at that time. You and I are dealing with the same issue right now. And I reached out to a few Instagram pages like, should I start this? And what happens is that once I started it, they said yes. They thought it was a good idea. I started it. And then I got really interested and I started diving into it a few layers deeper on everything. And that's what got me interested. And then I realized that I had the whole reason I do it, and maybe you're the same, is that we just want to see our service members in a better place,
Hmm.
right? Get them to their version of wealthy, like the quote that I posted yesterday, wealth is the ability to fully experience life. It's
Mm.
not a dollar amount. It could be anything, right? Some people just want to read books in a castle. That may be $5,000 a month. I was like, great, you're wealthy. So how do we get to that? And the impact has been awesome. I think the page has been very well received. And I care about people and I want to give back to a community that's meant so much to me,
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think there is a knowledge gap to a certain extent. They're taken advantage of, especially young Marines, young airmen, young soldiers, when
Yeah.
they're all of a sudden on their own. They have a paycheck, and that's
Yeah.
why you see those car dealerships right outside the base.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
what what have you found? What do you think is the biggest hurdle for people? Because we were talking before I hit record.
Hmm.
Pretty like you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know that 27% interest rate on a brand new Dodge
Yeah.
truck is a bad idea. But so that's one of the things that a lot of young soldiers do. But what do you think is the biggest hurdle for a lot of people when it comes to personal finance and the desire to even get to the point where you're at?
Mm. I would say it's two factors: the unknown and the belief that we're purely American and we're living that American dream already. So comfort,
Hmm.
right? So if we the fear of the unknown is a big threshold to cross, right? I mean, you and I have relatively we have tough jobs, right? So why don't people like doing IEDs? Because we're concerned that it's an unknown, right? It can cause us damage, and I think that people are paralyzed by the magnitude of the world of finance, right? How do I invest? How do I buy houses?
Mm,
How do I buy crypto? Where does life insurance fall into all this? Why should I buy gold? Do I need a credit card? Right? It's paralyzing.
sure.
And our parents have done so well with what they know. That's my default. I try to think that our parents did well. Some didn't, but I still think that most did generally well. And then we come with our finance scripts. It's like the rich are bad. Making money is evil, or money is the root of all evil, even though that's not really what it says. And then we cannot cross that threshold into understanding what we're doing with all this money. Because the problem is, and we're going to talk about the military pay scale, is that majority of Americans that join the military come from close to nothing, right? Lower socioeconomic statuses. And then they have potentially a lot of money and very little debt. So all of a sudden they have a ton of money, or at least more than what they had.
Sure.
If you go from $100 a week to $500 every 2 weeks, or sorry, $1,000 every 2 weeks, you're like, man, I'm making a ton of money. So they start living their life and trying to be like, I never want to live that life again. And they think that purchasing is how they find their joy. And then my second belief is a lot of what you saw in the event. A lot of immigrants are doing very well in America. And why do immigrants continue to thrive? I think is there's somehow this feeling that if you are purely American, you've already achieved something. You are already living the dream. But are you? A 9-to-5 is not living the dream. You know, $100,000 of credit card student debt is not living the dream. I don't care what you say. Now, maybe $500,000 in a home debt with an emergency fund and contributing to your retirement accounts, that may be the dream. But a $500,000 loan with $1,000 in your savings account, that's no dream. You're stressing out. You don't know how you're going to get out of an emergency. So people don't cross the threshold and admit, maybe I need help. Or maybe I just want to improve myself. Which, go figure, in the military, everybody's doing it right now. If you and I, to our senior guys, right, in whether it's SEER and EOD, I walk up to them and it's like, hey man, how do I do whatever? They're like, of course I'll teach you, bro.
Right.
So we're humble in our career, but we're not humble in personal finance. It's tough. Those, I think, are my two major hurdles.
Yeah, it's embarrassing. You know, I kind of think that's a cultural thing to some degree in America. Like, people don't want to talk about finances. And if you look at the stats, it's pretty sad. Like, most people can't afford $1,000 emergency fund. And these aren't just people that make $50,000 a year, folks. This is like there's something called lifestyle creep. And there's a good book called Millionaire Next Door that talks about who is a millionaire, literally $1 million of net worth. And it's not people who make $250,000 a year, because their lifestyle and their debt goes up. And I always look at it this way. I tell people, you're going to pay for it one way or another. You're going to either force discipline on yourself, or it will be forced upon you. And the forced upon you kind ain't fun, right? And debt is a different form of slavery, if you will. It's like you always will owe this money, and the system doesn't care. So I think it's important to start young. Like you talked to a lot of guys, like, if you get yourself in a hole when you're young in debt, then you got to dig your way out just to start from zero. And
rule of 72 applies both ways, right?
Yep.
18% interest, 18% interest rate means that your debt doubles every 4 years. You snooze, you're going to end up broke. And people don't see that, right? And I think that while people see the numbers, they don't understand the magnitude of it. But what's cool about finance, and I think this is what you and I like about it, it's not even about numbers. It's about concepts, right? Like, you taught me a ton that I had no idea, but you didn't teach me like number crunching. You literally taught me a concept. You taught me a system. And I was like, oh, that makes perfect sense. And it doesn't, I mean, amongst us, we talked for a little bit. I don't have a grasp on it, but I was like, not lost, because it's just a financial concept. People feel intimidated by a bunch of spreadsheets, right? Like, we're going to show one here later. If I show this to an average size corporal, he'll be like, oh my God, what does this all mean? And once you look at it, you're like, oh, it's simple, right? And we want to educate to provide people that space and to be able to live that better life and live free, right? I've actually was just talking about it. I mean, we spoke about it in the event, that Brazilian skateboarder is like, great, there's no slavery in America, but we're living enslaved to our debt, enslaved to our credit, enslaved to our jobs, right? I mean, do we feel slaves to the military? I don't feel like a slave. I'm choosing this life and I love it, right? Even though we're on our way out. But if you're in a 20-year 9-to-5 and you haven't gotten a raise in 5 years, and your boss calls you and is like, hey, come to work on Saturday, sorry, man, you're enslaved to that guy. And that's not cash money, not cash money.
Yep. And I like to talk about one of the concepts I like to talk about is separate the idea of money and dollars, because money can be a lot of different things. It can be pesos, but it is a productivity trade, right? So you're trading your time, your productivity for this currency unit, whatever country you're in. And when you go into debt, you are pulling productivity from the future. And when you
Yeah.
save money, you are saving productivity for the future. So eventually you'll have to expend productivity to pay off that debt. And so unless you're getting more and more productive, another way of saying that is getting ample amounts of raises every year, it gets
Yeah.
harder and harder and harder to pay off that debt. And
Yeah.
if you're going to pay for it one way or another, might as well pay a cheaper price without the interest rate. That's
Right.
kind of the way I look at it. So,
and people don't, I mean, we've spoken a lot about this, how people don't leverage both sides of the interest rate, right? If you owe 18% in a credit card and your savings are growing at a 0.25, you're getting crushed. But if your savings are at 4.2, I mean, now you've put yourself in a more advantageous position, right?
Yep.
And that's what we want to get to people, show all those opportunities that are out there to help us get out of debt, stay out of debt, and live free. Granted, I believe there's good debt, right?
Yeah, I agree.
House is important, right? You got to leverage OPM, but if you got to do it smartly, I mean, can you pull a loan, a personal loan? It may be the best thing in your life, and you just got to know how to use it. And that's what I always go back to. Every financial product is like it's like a gun. Let's not get into gun talk, but it's good and bad, depends who's holding it.
Sure.
Right. Now, same with every single financial product. You got to know how to use it right.
Yeah, different uses for different situations as well.
Right.
So I wanted to get into, you asked a question on Instagram the other night. You said, you asked kind of open-ended, is it easy to build wealth in the military? And my response was no, mainly because I wanted to spark conversation with you. But
yeah,
to a certain extent, I agree with you. It is easy. Easy is a relative term, but I know that you kind of specialize in personal finance, which at the end of the day, all you can do is control your own like circle of influence. So if there's something going on geopolitically, if there's something going on, nationally, I think you should know about it when it comes to things like inflation and know the consequences of it, but you can't control it. You can only react to it. So when you say wealth is, I think I'm not speaking for you when I say wealth is, you think it's fairly easy to build wealth. Do you still think that in light of inflation, in light of the fact that our BAH, and those of you who aren't in the military, BAHs are a housing allowance, it hasn't kept up with housing prices? Do you think that trend will continue where the first, probably you and I both experienced the first 12, 15 years of our career, it did keep up, right? It was kind of the purchasing power kept up with inflation, but now we've seen it really jump, inflation really jump. And I would say the last 2 years, people have net lost 10%, if not 15% of their purchasing power in the military. So do you think, obviously you can't tell the future, but do you think that will continue into the future with those kind of headwinds?
A few things. Short answer, yes. I think that interest rates are going to go higher. And I think it's a lot about mindset, right? For me, money, a lot of it is mindset. So I just got a message the other day. It's like, man, I can't wait. I have so much interest. My house, I just bought a house at an incredibly high interest rate. I'm going to refinance as soon as it goes down. I'm like, what's your interest rate? 5.5. I said, okay. What if it was 10? Maybe you have a rocking good deal, right? So I think that people get wrapped around the uncontrollables. You cannot control debt, right? Let's be real. We're not Ray Dalio. We cannot walk up to the president and be like, hey, this is what I'll do. I'll create a tip, right? Which is, at that point, was a great system, right? So people get wrapped around that instead of managing with what they got, right? That is the first thing. Going back to what you said, and I'll tie it back to military for the military folk. The things we cannot control is like a battle space. I cannot control what the adversary is doing behind their lines. I can only control what I'm doing behind my lines. And I'll do an intel analysis to be able to come up with strategize the reaction, right? But if you set up a framework in the past, you're going to be able to react much faster. So your core development, your course of action development is going to be much faster, much more accurate. And then you can take a blend of it all to stay ahead of the problem, right? So for the service members, how do you deal with that BAH problem? Well, you buy within your means. So if right now you can afford a house that is $200,000 at a 5% interest rate with a BAH, maybe that's your cap. Maybe $200 extra if you can do a sacrifice. Until then, go figure, you are going to get promoted. BAH is going to go up next year. Pay is going to go up next year. So right now you have to do, generally speaking, a large sacrifice for 365 days, assuming you bought on January 1st. Then that sacrifice is going to be smaller next year. And the next year will be smaller and smaller. Now, inflation is going to affect everything else, but you've locked in the price of that.
Sure.
You can control that, right? Assuming that you do not let your lifestyle creep crush you, right? So that's why it goes back to everything in habits. If you buy that house and you lock it in and you continue the lifestyle, technically speaking, even with inflation, you'll be able to stay ahead of it because you're not letting lifestyle run crazy. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I'm a big, like when it comes to inflation, debt with a productive asset on the other side, not debt to buy Air Jordans or something, but debt for a house or something productive. That's one of the only things that helps you during inflation, because inflation is inflating away your debt. If everything you pay cash for everything, the Dave Ramsey method, you're taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back, maybe even 2 steps back with inflation. It becomes very, very hard. So what do you think?
Can I say something? One thing about you just said about Jordans. So first of all, I do not like Dave Ramsey because I think it's a limiting capability. That is, I think I told you his analogy. I love analogies. Dave Ramsey is the equivalent of someone wanting to learn how to shoot like special forces and asking a drill instructor to learn. Drill instructor, Dave Ramsey is great in basics, but it's not advanced financial concepts. Right? That's why you don't see Ray Dalio with him. That's why you don't see Jeff Bogle with him. That's why you don't see the people that manage the funds for Yale and Harvard with him. It's very different basics, right? So onto the Jordans. I have an appreciation that this is largely because of my ex on things like that. Let's say fancy purses, Louis Vuitton, Gucci. For men, watches. All of these things can be assets, but it's a risk. Can you buy a pair of Jordans and make 20 grand? I'm all about it. Do it. But you got to manage your portfolio, right? People think that guys like you and I are saying, don't buy Air Jordans. No, go buy a badass pair of Jordans. Take a gamble. Hope you make 20 grand on them. But what happens if you don't? Are you prepared to handle that? Right? Like you and I, we believe in crypto. We took a gamble on that one app, but our life doesn't change with what happened, right? We're unfazed. That's how I tell people to do it. And again, maybe if you and I would have been buying Rolexes in 2018, we would be rolling in money now, but we didn't. What are you going to do? Right? Yeah. So it's about knowing how you manage your assets, and the wealthy are aware of that. They buy art, they buy watches, they buy bags, and they know how to manage it. My ex bought a ton of Louis Vuitton. She would use it for a year and sell it and make money. I was like, brilliant. I'm all about it. Keep doing that. Right.
Yeah. When I say Jordans, I'm mainly talking consumable, like people who are doing it as not a leverage play to sell it to make more money. It's a like America is 70% consumption. It's like, what can I buy to new stuff to wear, nicer restaurants to go out to?
And I was trying to agree with you, but I want people to on the mindset that like you can do good things with these things.
Oh, heck yeah.
We support it. We support it just how you use it. Right. You know, like, I mean, man, maybe you and I missed out not buying Jordans when we were 18. Shoot. Right?
Yeah, Rolex in 2021 was the best returning investment.
Yeah.
So
we missed out.
Things that are rare, right? You got to know the market too. But so along the idea of military pay, one of the things that I'm is very concerning to me is the VA benefits and your military retirement. You know, as you and I near the end of our career, I've kind of looked at that as a cherry on top of my life. It shouldn't be viewed that way, especially, you know, if you got your legs blown off in Iraq and VA benefits are like, maybe we won't, maybe we will. But they've already come out and talked about means testing VA benefits. And basically the solvency of the United States is one of the things I talk about a lot. And one of the things I think they're going to cut first is the smallest voting population, which is veterans. How do you view that in your investing? Let me frame it this way. You have a guaranteed paycheck for the rest of your life based off of solvency and political will of those in charge, right? So let's just assume it's there. It's not necessarily guaranteed purchasing power, though. So they could say, we owe you this much money, but it could buy you less and less throughout inflation. So how do you view a pension in your retirement or future kind of goals? Do you look at it at all, or is it just a cherry on top?
So the retirement accounts aside, 401ks, TSPs, all that aside,
Right.
just pensions.
Yep.
I see it as either, I just came up with this phrase, the comfort money, right? This is how you live the quality of life that you currently don't have. This is how you invest more. But if you say, I'm getting $3,000 from my VA, this is what I gotta live on, that's not smart. Right? That's not smart. Because you and I are gonna make a decision that make it our comfort money. Let's say at 65 or 72, when we start accessing our retirement, then it's just comfort. Then we can live with that. But again, as the purchasing power goes down, that's fine because we have other assets. People get out of it expecting it, needing it, and that is wrong, right? Because if you get out, should you retire at 42, 43, 40? I mean, maybe. Can you afford it? Probably not. But if you decide to retire and it's like, cool, I just ended this career, I'm gonna go find a job, career, start a business, and you invested all that tax exempt money from the VA, you're going to be rolling in money in no time.
Yep.
But people see it as I deserve it, instead of seeing it as comfort. I try to see it as this is the way that our nation says thank you, not give me my money. I earned this. I didn't earn it. I have my legs, I have my limbs, I have my health. I didn't earn this. Right. Now my buddies that lost legs, they earned that. It's totally different, right?
Yep.
People lost lives. It's not, and they can take it away in any moment. And I think that you and I keep talking about this. Don't rely on the VA. Is it nice that you have it? Great, but don't rely on it because it'll be gone in no time. Why wouldn't they take it away?
Yeah,
we're going to lose Social Security. Once that goes away, why wouldn't they just even out a little bit so that we have Social Security a little longer? Sure, why not?
Yeah. I think
politicians can do whatever they want.
I agree. Yeah, and basically, I don't want to be, the way I look at it, I don't want to be reliant. To some degree, you're reliant on your paycheck, but the longer I live, the less reliant I want to be on that. So I still want to get work and eventually be an entrepreneur after I get out of the military. But if you are reliant on that, then you're basically saying my future relies on the financial and economic know-how of politicians. And the $32 trillion in debt should show you that they don't have a lot of it, and eventually they're going to have to cut one way or another, by hook or by crook, through inflation or through actually cutting spending. And who are they going to cut benefits to? Is it going to be Social Security? Who knows? But it could be you.
Yeah.
Right.
And this is the other part, and this is what veterans always forget. Why would they cut back on the military budget? They shouldn't. We believe in that, and that's how we. You see, I don't know. You've seen the video. I was like, the dollar isn't backed by anything, and it's just the jets flying over by the ships. It's like, yes, this is a big part about how we back it with our security. So, are you willing to give up your VA for the security of our nation? I am.
Right.
I'm cool with that. Go buy more jets. Knock yourself out. But people forget that. They become from, then they also go from like, oh yeah, I believe in America. I don't take any welfare. And then you retire. It's like, can I have some welfare, please? I need my VA, my disability,
right,
and my retirement pension. Shut up, man. Don't rely on the government.
Yeah, this is one of the things I've said for a long time, and it would probably be very unpopular and take a lot of work, but I think I would rather have, if they gave you the option of making 50% more during your time in or getting a pension for the rest of your life, I'd take the 50% more.
That's how the Australian military is, and they love it.
Yeah.
They control their future, and I think that's great.
Yeah, me too. Because like the golden handcuffs, people who stay in just to stay in to hit 20. I don't know what retainability, that's a whole nother conference ball of wax, but
to that point, that's why I like BRS.
Yeah.
It puts the decisions on the individual.
Right.
I think the BRS is awesome. You want to get out of 12, get out of 12. You want to get out of 18, knock yourself out. You're going to be fine.
Yeah,
and people are so scared to leave.
System. Yeah.
Yeah, the blended retirement system. Thank you. Yeah. That is how we get our matching on the equivalent to our 401k.
Free money.
Free money. Love it.
So let's take a look at this. You sent me a Excel spreadsheet here.
Yeah.
I thought you were a real nerd when I saw this, but that's how you know you're a numbers guy. But
Well, I'm not, but this one makes sense because I want to convey the value of this.
All right, so talk to me about this this breakdown here.
All right, so this all came about when I first started the Financial Enabler, about how much money do we have, right? How much money can we make in the military? So what's here, I want to focus the people's attention to the top where it says the months and the year, right? So I added up, I went to the year and my rank, and when I got promoted to account for the BAH. So the first 2 years I was in Japan, then I came back, I got married in 2007, I lived in North Carolina. In 2009 and 10, I lived on base because I was in Hawaii. Then I moved to California all the way till 2018. From 11 to 18, I was in California. And as you see, the BAH increases, going back to the idea, you buy a house in 2011 for $2,000 of BAH, go figure, by the time that I left in 2017, it's $2,241. Now I can afford my house, no dramas, right?
Now, did you sell that? Or did you rent it when you left?
I sold it.
Okay.
And this is a whole different conversation.
Okay.
Do I miss out, right? Whatever, irrelevant.
Yep.
I don't try not to think about it. Then in 2018, I go down to $200 because I was able to pocket that from overseas pay. And then in 2020, I moved back to Albuquerque. And that's how much BAH have made since.
Okay.
So adding all that up, if you scroll all the way to the right, you'll get the total amount of BAH that I've got in my life. So far it's $2,058,300.
Yeah.
To me, that's wealthy in 20 years.
Yep.
Right. And then I went on after we decided to come on this podcast, and I added to that. So the VA loan savings, I started from I bought my first house. VA loan is often 1% less than the civilian's rate. Go figure. It's also at 0% down, counter to the FHA of 3.5. But I only said I saved the 1%. That is 1% over my lifetime, $56,000. I added up the total amount of the cost of the Amex credit cards, $13,000. If I would have had it from day one, assuming, right? Chase, $9,500. And then the average cost of health insurance at $68,000 over a lifetime, right? That is assuming today's rates. I get it. People can poke holes in this. This is a lot of hypotheticals. So if you scroll a little bit further to the right, you'll see $405,000 in just those things. Now, we're not even going down to BAS. I didn't even include the fact that BAH, our health insurance, our BAS is tax exempt. I did not account for tax exempt pay.
You're right.
So roughly speaking, in 20 years, 19 years, somebody could have $405,000. I think you're wealthy. That doesn't even, obviously we can add equity on the homes. I'm not adding TSP. So again, not saying exactly, but it's doable with the amount of money that we get paid.
Right.
And right now, if I went outside the civilian world, and I mean, I see a lot of people's personal finances. I do not see many people worth $405,000 in their savings or total net worth at 20 years in the military.
Right. And that's not even counting if you invested that capital gains and all the stuff that comes along with it. That's it. And then I imagine the health insurance, is that for single or married?
I just did it for one person, single. I did it at $300 a month.
So imagine that. You know, I have siblings who are in the civilian sector who pay $1,200 a month for their family for insurance.
Right. So, I kept it pretty low because I didn't want these numbers to be bigger and ridiculous. Yeah. Right. But you're right. Your siblings $1,200 a month. That is a ton of money.
Yeah.
Like they would, and this is what people don't realize. The military, we can make good money. If you told these benefits to a multimillionaire, he would be like, what? I could be rolling in money with that. You're telling me I could buy a house every year at 0% down? Yeah, bring it. I'll do it every year. I don't care what I've got to put my family through, right? And it's how they see money, their relationship to money, and their personal habits that allow them to get wealthy. It is not the amount of money that they make. On top of that, and you and I are kind of in this position right now, our work demand is not that high. So we have time for entrepreneurship. We have time for businesses. We have time to leverage the tax code to put more money in our pockets. It's totally doable. And there's plenty of guys and gals doing it out there. and they're doing awesome things, and it's not that hard. But if you think that it's difficult, yeah, of course you're never going to achieve it.
Sure.
Of course.
Yeah. I don't think, I think one of the things that you were talking about that holds people back is just lack of knowledge. And if you jump that hurdle, if you just understand that the number one thing that holds people back is their own personal behavior. They spend more than they make. So if you can get that dialed, that's like 90% of the battle. Because the knowledge of where to put your money and stuff isn't really that cosmic. There are a lot of professionals out there who try to confuse you, but it really isn't that cosmic. But most people spend more than they make, and they're just on that cycle their whole life. And as soon as they pay off the car, they need another one, and then off they go again. And that's ultimately your decision. Like I'm not here to like browbeat people and say you've got to stop doing that, but there's going to be pain one way or another. Like I said, discipline is either forced upon you, or you could force it on yourself, which I think is a better way to do it, because you're going to end up wealthier with more ways to pivot. Because you were talking about what wealth is. Wealth is a lot of things to me, but one of the freedoms it provides is freedom for your time and your energy in like the brain bites, right? What you spend your time thinking about. If you are poor, you are thinking about where you're going to get your next meal. There's not a lot of people in Africa who are making art. Not to say they're not artistic, but they have, if you're worried about where your meal's coming from, you can't really think outside the box. You're thinking about survival. That's all you're thinking. And in America, we're the wealthiest country in the world. You essentially force it on yourself here.
And I just finished the Tony Robbins book, Money Master the Game. Great book. Great. I think it's well researched. And he says there, when that book was released, I think it was 2014, that the 1%, if you want to be in the 1% of humanity, is $32,000 a year. That is most of the people that you and I know, and very close to a lot of the E3s. But again, accounting for all their benefits in the military and the fact that they're getting food paid and housing paid, they are there. All of us are over the 1%. What are we complaining about? And then and there's plenty of ways to make money, right? There's literally books upon books upon books of how you can create money. It's America. For crying out loud, people have gotten wealthy selling fidget spinners. You can do whatever you want here. It's
I was late to the fidget spinner game. I wish I was early.
I missed out. Yeah, I never had one.
Wouldn't that be funny? A funny story. How'd you make your millions? Selling fidget spinners and dream catchers at gas stations.
Jeez, we missed out.
I think a good way to think about it is a game, because one of the things I talk about a lot on my channel is just the rules of money and basically how money works and where it comes from. And that like a lot of people are realizing this because they're seeing banks fail and they're like, wait a second, how do banks fail? I put my money in there, and they don't understand that they're giving an unsecured loan to a bank who eventually levers it up. So understanding how money works, and you talk about leveraging debt. Robert Kiyosaki is pretty good on this kind of concept, is like, what are assets, what are liabilities in a debt-based monetary system that we have? And just saving money and putting it under your mattress, you're always going to be behind the power curve, because that money is losing value. It may still say $1 on it, but it just buys you less. It's losing value compared to goods and services.
And I always go back to this, is like, I wish it wasn't true, but if you look at the balance sheets of banks, look where they put their money. You could do that too. It's totally available to the average American to do exactly what a bank is doing, and then replicate those balance sheets. Obviously at your level, but then where do they protect their money? Why don't you protect some of your money the same way? It's worth considering. How do they pay less taxes? So apply those strategies. And again, we've all said, if you understand the rules, you have good habits, and you're able to understand the game, you can win this game. That's why I love the title, Money Master the Game, right? It's a game. And that's why a guy like him, who came from nothing, Tony Robbins, came from nothing, broke, is now one of the wealthiest people in America. He literally changed his life. And he did not, he's literally made his wealth talking. Literally talking, right? Nothing fancy. And like I tell a lot of people that it isn't about hard work to a certain extent, because
a guy who works on a construction crew works a lot harder than I do every day, right?
Every day.
Backbreaking work, 12 hours a day, maybe, potentially makes less than me. So it really that's part of the game, is like, how replaceable is that job? How do you build a competitive moat around yourself where you can do things that other people can't, and I can't just hire some random person and they could do the exact same job. All these things.
And to that point is that I think that you and I believe in those people and we want to help them. They are actually the people I want to help the most.
Me too. Yeah.
Because if they understood how money works, they could choose to leave.
Right.
Like, the reality is that could America afford to bring purely immigrant work? Yeah, we can do it. We just got to get all of ours out of it.
Right.
We can do it. You can do it. And there's plenty of ways to do it. And that way you can get back into a creative space, being able to not stress about money and choose to be like, you know what? I am not going to go to construction work today. Cool. Let's do it, bro. Let's make it happen. I know right now that if somebody called you and I and said, I'm in construction work and I want to get out of this as quick as possible, you and I would be like, let's go. Let's work together. We'll find a way. If there is a way, we'll find it, you know? And people think that they're stuck in their circumstance and they have to live the life that the environment has given them.
Yep.
You don't have to. You do not have to.
Yeah, but nothing changes if nothing changes. So if you keep doing it, if you never change your financial habits, then nothing will change. And the world runs, to a certain extent, money and investing is run off of emotions. I would say actually majority of things that happen in the world are run off of two emotions: greed and fear.
Oh yeah.
And you want to try to invest in a way where you're not in that position where you're fearful. Some things you can't avoid, but if you're always operating on a razor's edge with your finances, and then something bad happens, your car needs a $10,000 fix, or you need to get a new one, you're screwed. And then you got to start that cycle all over again. And it takes time. I think Dave Ramsey does do a good job of at least telling people the steps to get out of debt, but nothing changes if nothing changes. So if you're and the other emotion, like I said, is greed. Like I've been guilty. Everyone's guilty of greed to some extent. But if you are one of those people that is like, sees an opportunity and you're like, this will change my life overnight, you should probably step back, because anytime emotion comes into your life, when it comes to investing, you're probably not making a wise decision. Not always, but more than likely not.
And to your point about emotions, right? And I'm going to correlate to a few books, right? A few people. Tony Robbins, Money Master the Game. Ray Dalio in all his books. The Templeton guy in every interview. And I'll bring this one up, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, right? All of them talk about emotions, but they talk about gratitude, abundance. So now if you're making these decisions in gratitude and abundance instead of greed, fear, all of a sudden, go figure. There's something to what you just said, because we omit that. And it goes back to how the wealthy think. If they're grateful for wealth, and I'm not even talking when they have billions, I'm talking when they had $1,000 and they were hungry, they were like, I am grateful for where I'm going. I'm grateful for where I'm going. It's totally different if you're like, I'm going to rob people. I am fearful of the world, right? It's totally different framework from every decision, right? And obviously we can dive into psychology of it for hours, but we're not going to do that. But yeah, it's so many people are saying that. And a lot of these wealthy people started from nothing. They're not even, if you think of the Carnegies, you think of the first Carnegie, right? You think of Templeton, first Templeton, Charles Schwab, first Schwab, right? Jack Bogle, he was the first Bogle, right? All of these guys did it. You can do it too,
Yeah,
totally
you can be a slave in your mind to money if you're poor and rich, right? And so I think having perspective, because some people, the one thing they'll never have is enough, and you'll be a slave, like the poor people are slaves to debt. You'll be a slave to that idea, and you'll never have enough. And so there's this, like you talked about, there's a fine balance. So I wanted to circle back to, you mentioned our parents and our parents' generation. I see a lot of things online. There's say people kind of use pejoratives. They say, okay, boomer, or like millennials, which I'm a millennial. They kind of look at millennial generation as lazy, dumb, stupid, whatever, and that's why they can't afford a house and yada yada. But if you look at statistics, it now takes 2 incomes to provide for a family. It used to be a high school diploma, and you could go work somewhere and provide for a family pretty comfortably when baby boomers were our age. So do you think that the trend, do you look at investing slightly differently? When you said they kind of had it on easy mode to some degree, I don't know if that's exactly what you said, but when it came to boomers, they're the wealthiest generation. Do you think there's different challenges for the generation of today that they didn't see, and we have to face both personally and as a group?
I think, and I had not thought of this, so this thought is brand new. So circling back to what I said, I think our parents did best in educating us about money, right? Even if you came from very poor parents, odds are your parents did the best they could. That's what they knew, right? Now, onto the point of wealth, this is what is the new thought. The wealthiest generation had a massive circumstance that allowed them to become that, which was the war. Granted, when they came back from the war, they did not choose to become lazy and wait for the VA to pay them. They were like, I'm going to work. I'm going to raise families. I'm going to go to a farm. I'm going to go work for Ford, whatever. I'm going to become a small business owner. They all did that. So that crisis led to that change in them coming up. Now, it could be said that our generation was too comfortable, maybe, right? I haven't looked into the macros of that, but a lot of it goes to the mindset. They were like, they were probably so grateful to be alive, to have survived that they gave life their everything. But then we lived, I don't know, 45. Now we are at 60, 80 years of comfort, right? Because even our current, I don't want to leave it just to war, right? We can look at it as pandemics, whatever it is. Crisis leads to a reaction. In lack of that, people make different decisions. And I have no doubt that you and I would be very different people if the GWAT would have been against China. We would be very different. And again, it could be anything, right? There's for example, Argentina, right? And it's been in economic drama for ages, right? Ages. That probably causes a strain on people's mind, right? Look at Africa. Why isn't Africa the wealthiest countries in the planet when they're incredibly, they have a ton of resources? So there's something to where we are and how we react to the environment. Granted, there's plenty of wealthy Africans, there's plenty of wealthy Argentinians. So how do you react to it? So going back to the boomers, they made a decision. Did our generation choose to do that? Maybe not. But then again, we also did create the Mark Zuckerbergs, the Elon Musks, the Steve Jobs, all of these guys. I think Steve Jobs was a boomer. Don't quote me in generations, but they're still great. So it's still doable. But if we think about it as like, oh man, my dad had it really easy. This sucks. Obviously, you're never going to get, you're not going to amount to nothing. But guys that said, man, I saw my dad work his butt off for me. I'm going to make him proud. You don't even have to see you're going to be better than him. You say, I'm going to make him proud. You'll be just fine. Odds are life is going to smile at you and you're going to get your opportunity as well.
Yeah. Everyone's dealt a different hand generationally, personally, in their families and economically. Like a lot of people, the wealthiest people started from the bottom. You look at fighters in the UFC, like people who, a lot of the best fighters had really hard childhoods. And it's that toughness that was forged in them at a young age. So all you can do is your best with the cards you're dealt. I do agree with you that it doesn't do it, even if it's true. Even if it's true that we have different circumstances, I think you should understand what those are and delve into what causes inflation and what the trends are and all that kind of stuff. But it doesn't do you any good to just bitch and moan about it and say, hey, they had it easier. And one of the, go ahead.
And one thing that to me is really important is that your hardship is truly as hard as you believe it to be. Right? So I always go back to this. Do I think I'm wealthy? I think I'm wealthy. But I've also dealt with 2 divorces. Like I've had my fair share of like tough stuff, right? And I've spoken about like my situation with suicide, whatever. If I choose to live and like my life sucks, I've had 2 divorces, then of course my life's going to suck, right? Who cares if you've got millions of dollars if your life sucks, right? Conversely, Who cares if you're poor if your life is great? That's why plenty of poor people on this planet are having a blast.
Yeah.
And again, it's how you handle the cards, right? Mindset, right? And people think that we are not gonna, like, people that talk about money think that don't talk about mindset. Go check every single wealthy person. They'll talk about mindset within 10, 20 minutes. It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
It's gonna happen. Yeah.
What, you know, all you got to do is talk about people who win the lottery. Like, if it's money, it should be set for life. And the mindset they had was this mindset, I got to spend this. And so the one thing I would add, just to piggyback on what you were saying about generations, I think one thing it's not that you don't listen to your parents, but I think older generations have a hard time keeping up with technology changes, and one of the big ones is school, right? So when our parents went to school, college specifically, it was a game-changing thing, right? Because all of the knowledge in the world, to a certain degree, was centralized there. And the decentralization of knowledge is a very powerful thing, and that's what the internet has done. And so school to them when they were young was the differentiating factor between making tons of money and not going to college. And in today's world, our generation has been saddled with a lot of debt because they listen to their parents, but the world has changed to a certain degree. I'm not saying school is a waste of time. I'm saying knowledge isn't just behind those walls. So everything you're learning there to a certain degree can be found for free on the internet.
Yeah.
It's a very, very
few
powerful
careers
thing.
that require it. There's very few careers that require it. And I think that, you know, I got my MBA last year. I haven't used it. I probably will never actually use it. You look at plenty of wealthy people, they don't have degrees or they're not using them. And it's because they've adapted to the environment and used the skills that they had. Going back to the MMA fighters. I mean, you're willing to take enough punches in the face and get good at punching people in the face, you're going to be wealthy. And I totally support that, right? It's a balance. But can you become a lawyer? And can you become a wealthy lawyer without school? Not happening. Can you become a wealthy CPA accountant without school? Not happening.
Right.
And that's where there's incredible skills that are required, right? Mechanical engineering, I guess, is neither here nor there, right? Because plenty ones happen. Make it like there's, how does an 18-year-old end up in NASA? Because he created a robot program, right?
Right.
It's just what you make of it, right? And it's how you got to react and stay with the times. And it's not easy, man. I think that in a lot of ways, you and I are fortunate that we found these things. We didn't wake up at 15 and say, you know, I'm gonna be a finance guy. I had no idea I was gonna find this, you know, no clue.
Yeah, I think staying with, like, ultimately at the end of the day, like, companies, imagine yourself as an owner of a company and somebody comes into you with this expensive piece of paper and the other person comes in without it, but they have a ton of knowledge on how to make that company more money. Who you can hire? You're going to hire the person that makes the company more money. So ultimately, that's what employees are. Do you cost them more than you make them? Then they probably won't hire you. If you make them more than you cost them, they want to hire you. So work on those skills that make that happen.
Yeah, totally agree.
All right, bro. So if you were to leave, like, if you were to kind of plant a seed, a nugget in a young person's head, like, hey, here's something I would be thinking about. How do you kind of, we'll leave them with this, but if somebody's starting from zero, right, they're just they have no financial education, which I say the majority of Americans are in that position. What do you say to inspire them to, because if it's just like, hey, save your money, but what vision do you sell them, or do you kind of tell them about maybe the compounding interest or whatnot to kind of get them motivated? Like, hey, this can really be possible, and I can go north and make it.
It's actually very easy in my mind, because I could say change your habits. I could say start saving, start saying investing. I'm not even on this. That actually is not it. And I learned this from a billionaire in its dream. Go write a list of 10 concise dreams. It could be something like, I want to retire my dad with $100,000 a year in 20 years. I will do that. I want to own a house in this place that looks like this. I want a river running through it with trout. I mean, that's my dream, right? Yeah, right. I want to create this change in the world. And the more concise and the more you have, I can assure you, you'll get to wealthy. because all of a sudden you realize now you're going to attach saving, investing in your habits to something with joy,
right,
instead of pain. If you think it's like, man, again, people say, oh, don't buy a latte. I'm like, you know what? Buy all the lattes. But if you're able to save $5 somewhere else, because you're like, this is for my dad in 20 years. This is for my house. This is for my wife. This is for my kids. I'll tell you my dream. And I think it's the second time I'm going to say it in social media. I want to fund MRIs for every EOD tech. The day they graduate, I want to have a nonprofit. They graduate EOD school. Here you go. I pay for an MRI. Go get your brain scanned. That's my dream. I need millions of dollars. That brings me joy. And I'm willing to do what it takes to get to that. So if people can do that, just dream, they'll be wealthy. I love it. That's I think that is the core of wealth.
Love it. Yeah, it's easy to complain. It's easy to bitch on. But if you have a vision, like I agree with you, if you have a vision of where you want to go, instead of just what you don't want to do, but instead of where you want to go, I think that's highly motivating.
Yeah, totally.
All right, Jaime, where can people find you on the interwebs?
They can find me on Instagram, Reddit. I have a Discord. Yeah, I think those are the main ones right now. LinkedIn under my name, Jaime. I don't want to put my last name right now, but Financial Enabler on most of those.
Okay.
I looked for Financial Enabler, and it looks with a logo much like this one right there, right? And yeah, just reach out. We're here to help, and I'm here to support your audience, just like you're here to support my audience.
Oh yeah, dude. Well, I'll keep you around for a couple minutes after I hit end, and I'll link all your stuff in the description below. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll probably do this again. Love talking with military guys about finance, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.
Later. Aloha.